Hello YouTube, it is your boy GCTV. I am so excited to finally get that last video posted. I didn't take a day off, but it just took me a little longer than I expected to kind of get to editing that video. My hair kind of looks chopped. I had a headphone dead from editing videos earlier. And obviously we have continued to do our 30 Days of Summer Smash kind of in the background as short form content, but I'm really trying to get this Dexter series in the books so we can move on to some of the Avengers movies, because that was very long overdue. Hopefully between us finishing Dexter and getting into Squid Game Season 3, we can kind of get some Avengers and some MCU movies in before we have to take a break again. I know it's kind of hectic on the channel. There's a lot of new TV shows coming out this year, but we're here to talk about Dexter Original Sin. We are here in the 9th episode of the show, where Dexter finally gets Aaron Spencer on his kill table in this twist-filled episode full of fan service. Again, we kind of just summarized the videos to start out, but yeah, we have one more episode after this. I cannot believe it. It's going to be crazy to see how they end it. But Brian Moser targets a woman from his past while the 1970s timeline explores a difficult decision by Harry and Doris. It is kind of cool how they took it here. They kind of dove a little bit more into Brian Moser this episode. I actually didn't really mind it. We can kind of discuss it a little bit more throughout the video. Clever foreshadowing and dark humor mix in as Debra visits Miami Metro, Molly remains the moral compass, and Dexter faces a tense cliffhanger. There's all sorts of crazy stuff going on, you know, kind of hinting at the fact that Debra might be joining Miami Metro Homicide, and she's starting to take a liking, you know, the girl power aspect of it. She's talking to all the females like Maria LaGuerta, Tanya. Maybe those could end up being mother figures. That's kind of like a symbolism. There's an interesting thing going on there. But this show's tumultuous episode sees Dexter finally getting Aaron Spencer on his kill table, something he has been plotting on. This is obviously the biggest kill table of his serial killer career so far, because this is a big case that Miami Metro is trying to solve, and he is looking to eliminate the threat. Obviously, Brian Moser targets a woman from his past as his next victim. It's Barb. Now, I don't remember if she had any like significance in the original series. I actually don't really have a memory of them talking about Barb, but that's probably because she got killed off. I think she's kind of a prequel exclusive character, which is kind of cool to see that separate storyline with Brian Moser and her. In the 1970s timeline, Harry and Doris take Dexter and Brian in after Laura Moser's brutal murder, but they must make a difficult decision, and it's kind of interesting that they didn't show Laura Moser's murder on screen. Obviously, it's pretty graphic, and they have like kids sitting in there. Man, this show's not pulling any punches. I really like it. Obviously, just the kind of the information of the episode. The episode is directed by Michael Lehman and written by Scott Reynolds. Obviously, it aired shortly after the last episode. We really need to talk about that. It is called Blood Drive because there's a blood drive going on in Miami Metro for the fallen comrade of Bobby. And honestly, I do think to an extent they did a pretty good job of balancing all the storylines and kind of using subtleties throughout. So it'll be fun, full of twists and turns, a huge serving of fan service for legacy fans. And I don't know if I really minded it here. I think they did a little bit better with the fan service. So let's just get into our giant discussion, and that'll be the video. Kind of have a review segment at the end as well. Honestly, I had a couple negativities back in last episode, but man, things are really taking shape in this exciting and twist-filled episode. I really like this one. I really like how they rebounded. I really like how they kind of recovered from the fiasco of the last episode. You know, we saw a little too many villains developing, but actually in this episode, Hector Estrada's storyline is basically over. Gio's presumably done because the relationship ended with Debra. To an extent, I was kind of wishing some things upon the show last review, and it worked. I think they listened to me, even though the show is already out. You know, you have that. Obviously, the Ice Truck Killer is still taking shape, and Aaron Spencer is still taking shape. But this is awesome. After the revelation in the last episode that the future Ice Truck Killer Brian Moser was a suspect in their serial killer case, the penultimate entry in the prequel series' first season delves into it a bit more, which is actually a really cool angle. I didn't realize they were going to go so in depth. I actually kind of like how they executed it though. The 1970s flashback reveal that Brian was reluctantly taken in by the Morgan family, but after he displayed worrying signs of psychosis, Harry and Doris make the difficult decision to keep him away from Dexter. He's a very violent child. He's kind of lashing out. He's like, "Where's my mom? I want to go home," that sort of thing. And he's kind of an outcast from a kid. And this is a very traumatizing event, and obviously you can't really hold it against Brian Moser. You actually feel bad for the guy, and you never feel bad for him really at any point in the original series. Now, obviously there was still kind of that sentiment that, yeah, I want to get with my brother, I want to reunite, and that's kind of been his motive all along, and they definitely highlight that here. But really, hearing of the story of what happened, like he was separated from his brother and he wanted to get back to him, and he seemed like kind of the outcast. That's a really cool fucking angle that they really put emphasis on here in the prequel. These scenes shed more light on the events in the 90s timeline, and they generally work really well. Again, there were some worries, but it worked really well here. It still feels very fan service, of course, like kind of heavy to introduce Brian Moser into the story, with legacy fans very aware of what eventually happens to him, of course. And maybe it is a little unnecessary necessary considering there was a whole season kind of dedicated to Brian Moser and dedicated to the Ice Truck Killer storyline. It might be a little redundant to have him actually kill throughout the 90s, but maybe it would be kind of cool to see the parallels between him and Dexter and them kind of starting out as serial killers. That might be awesome. I don't know. However, Robbie Adel nails the character. He's kind of a new actor that gets brought in, and it's fun to see his origin story for sure and how he acted. He's really dope. He honestly kind of looks like a younger Sylvester Stallone, but he has a very sinister vibe. He's doing it really well. Again, the casting department, I will forever give them credit in these reviews. The episode has a lot of twists and turns as Dexter tries to find the right opportunity to get Aaron Spencer on his kill table, as he does with all of his murderers, all of his criminals. Once again, the inexperienced serial killer makes a fatal mistake, and this leads to a tense cliffhanger ahead of the final episode, which is coming straight down the pipeline. But I will try to get that going as soon as we possibly can because I really want to wrap up this series. I am super intrigued to see what happens. Patrick Dempsey obviously doesn't play a very good bad guy, and his motive is actually perfect in its simplicity and feels consistent with the character. However, it's unlikely he'll be up there with Dexter's best villains of all time, but that's okay because this show is really nailing damn near everything else. So obviously getting into the clever foreshadowing in this episode, it's nearly derailed by some on-the-nose dialogue. There are some kind of inconsistencies in the writer's room. Let's get into it. This episode doesn't go without its faults. Debra Morgan makes her first appearance at Miami Metro, and she is introduced to Sarah Michelle Gellar's Tanya Martin, who encourages her to pursue a career in law enforcement. That's a pretty cool moment. I think that's an awesome scene that they include. It's a nice bit of foreshadowing, but like her dialogue feels a bit too on the nose, especially as she doesn't know who Debra is as a character after only just meeting her. This is the first time she's ever met Debra Morgan, because it's not like Harry has a bring his kids to work day. Could always use some kick-ass women around here. Like, that's fine. That's a fine thing to say, but it's like you just met this girl. And it's almost like the show is bringing back too much nostalgia. Maybe even teasing fans to an extent. And that is a very, very weird strategic kind of thing they went for here. Molly Brown doesn't feature too heavily in this episode, and that's fine. Obviously, she just had like a huge moment last episode with her and Gio, but she is still the standout performer in this series so far. She's one of the characters that isn't a huge part. She's not like a piece in the main storyline because obviously she doesn't work for Miami Metro yet. Let's be fucking patient, writers, and not fucking tease fans like that. But she's still kind of in the background doing her own thing, kind of living out her high school years, and that is really fun to see as a Debra fanatic from the original series. She is the moral compass of the prequel, just like she was in the original series, and her bushy-eyed naivete makes her eventual downfall all the more tragic. We know what happens to Debra, and by the way, if I ever even hint at spoiling something from the original series, or if you haven't watched anything from this series, do not watch these videos. I cannot stress that enough. These are very plot-centric episodes to an extent. I mean, obviously we have some discussion, we talk, we do reviews, but stay out of it if you haven't seen the material. That's all I'm going to say. Her brief and uneventful meeting with Maria LaGuerta also works well. It's fun and doesn't feel too forced in terms of future significance. It's just kind of to establish the relationship, like, hey, Maria LaGuerta, meet Debra Morgan. It's gonna be cool. Obviously those two will blossom into a relationship in the original show, and it would actually be pretty cool to go back and rewatch the original show before Resurrections, but I don't think I'm gonna have time with that due to my schedule. Maybe someday I'll watch everything in order and be satisfied, kind of how I did Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul in my free time, but we'll see about it. That classic Dexter dark humor is also present in this episode. Of course, it's great as the killer with a code ends up giving too much blood during a Miami Metro donation drive. There's also an amusing moment that involves Dexter playing some retro 90s game while Spencer's wrapped in plastic on his kill table, kind of calling back to him and his son, going to the arcade, breaking all these records, his son being like this huge gamer. Dexter adds kind of a twist to the kill, and I think that was pretty cool. Patrick Gibson really does channel Michael C. Hall in these dark humorous moments. It's fucking perfect. I have not seen a recasting as good as Dexter Morgan in such a fucking long time. This is crazy how eerily similar those two play the characters. Now, Michael C. Hall will always be the better Dexter Morgan, I think, unless season 2 is just fucking like the best season of television ever, but Patrick Gibson is killing it, by the way. He was clearly born to play the younger version of Harry Morgan's adopted son. I mean, he fucking did awesome. Let's get into the review. Alright everybody, it's kind of review time where I'm going to wrap up, kind of summarize, maybe sum it up, talk about what we discussed in the last like 10 minutes of the video. So again, just kind of discussing the main things that happened here. Like, there were some weird kind of forceful things. I think like the prequel porn is kind of coming in, the nostalgia porn. Again, like I've said in many videos before, I probably shouldn't say that on YouTube. Kind of the horniness of legacy fans is getting in the way of in the writing room. But it's fine. I think this is still a really good episode, and I'm actually very impressed because if you saw last review, it's not that it was a negative review per per se because I still enjoyed what we got, but there were definitely some faults to that episode, and I was really worried that they weren't going to pick up the scraps, and really worried that they weren't going to move on from certain things. But again, Miguel Prado's not present here, Hector Estrada's not present, Gio's not present, so now we're basically focused on Aaron Spencer and the Ice Truck Killer. And yeah, the Ice Truck Killer thing is very fucking weird to be introducing in a prequel series where, like I've said earlier in the video, there's a whole season dedicated to the Ice Truck Killer. But maybe the Brian Moser origin story kind of tying into that and explaining how he got to where he was is what we needed. Maybe we need a little bit of that. Maybe we could have like a Freak of the Week thing where Brian Moser goes and kills somebody for no fucking reason. That would be fine in like season 2, but I really do hope, by the way, that the last episode focuses damn near purely on the Aaron Spencer storyline and maybe some Debra stuff. I don't really care to see the Ice Truck Killer in the finale because you gotta wrap the main story up. We'll see how they execute it. That's gonna do it for the video. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As always, it has been your boy GZTV. I am out, guys. I really appreciate your guys' support. I'm trying to grind as much as I can, but I have work. I have to get off of work, do cardio, do my short form content, and then do this content. So it's pretty hectic during the day, and obviously tomorrow is gonna be the NBA Finals Game 3. So that's a good game. I'll obviously cover it on the channel, but that being said, all that stuff coming together, I'm out.